Hello, friends, and welcome back. Today, we will be discussing an easygoing, lighthearted movie called Irreversible. We discussed Into the Void a few weeks ago, and so to kind of a warm up for this one. But so Irreversible. Well, here is Susanna and Chris. Susanna, will you give us an introduction, please?
Hello, my name is Susana Imaginario. I am the author of Timelessness, and I run a YouTube channel called Den of the Weird.
And Chris.
Yes, my name's Chris Moe, and I sometimes run a YouTube channel with my name, or sometimes appear on other people's channels having chats about interesting and lighthearted and, jovial fare, Saturday night movies like Irreversible.
As right before we hit record, we were discussing kind of rewatching this, and Susanna, you mentioned that you were going to rewatch it yesterday, but you gave up. What were the reasons why you couldn't make it through?
The sound. The last time I watched it was like 20 years ago, and I don't remember being an issue. I remember being difficult to watch, but the sound was really. I was getting heart palpitations. It was getting into my nerves, so I had to mute it and just watch with the subtitles, and eventually gave up. But yeah, it was so disturbing. It was literally, I could feel the vibrations. I said, "What is going on?" So
Yeah,
so weak.
It's something I noticed on the rewatch too, is the music and the sounds. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we talked about this quite a lot with Into the Void, with No Way. No Way isn't just about visuals, it's disturbing you. That's why he uses strobing in basically every movie that he makes. It's the reason that he uses very disturbing sounds the whole way through it. There are quite a lot of them in this, and he actually varies it up, I think, quite a lot in Irreversible, but it is this idea that he wants an assault on all of your senses, not visually, not just in one way. He wants you to feel uncomfortable the whole way through. And, as we said before, examine how that makes you feel, whether you're repulsed by that. Funnily enough, the thing that I found in my rewatch this time that was most difficult to watch is just the general hate language that runs the whole way through the movie. If you know what I mean, rather than just there's two very key scenes of violence that are in there that you're forced to watch repeatedly. One because it's unedited, and one because he keeps on beating him over the head with the extinguisher repeatedly. But it's the general hate language that runs the whole way through the movie, whether it's misogyny, whether it's slurs the whole way through. That is the bit that I found the real assault on the senses, because you can maybe it's a rewatch thing, that you know what's coming up at certain points and you kind of go, right, I'll get that, but it doesn't let up throughout the whole movie. And again, examine what you feel, what that makes you feel about it. Is it the point that a reasonable human being would just turn it off? I think that's the most normal response to do at a certain point and say, look, turn it off forever. I'm not in the mood today. It's one of those things. So those were kind of my main top level feelings of the film, like from a sensory perspective as I went through this time.
Yeah, notice the I don't know if I didn't notice it the first time or on rewatches, but where we start and where we finish the movie are two very different kind of, gives you very different feelings. I wonder if one, of course I know it's intentional, but I wonder if we started and the story was told in chronological order, if people would have been appalled at the end. I think starting off at the end and going backwards, I guess, what's the benefit, or why was that decision made, or how does it work or not work for both of you?
Little disclaimer. People tend to compare Irreversible with Memento because they have the similar structure. But I think it's not a fair comparison because it's for two completely different reasons. In Irreversible, I think if the story was told normally, because it would almost be, it would be a simple revenge story, or it would kind of keep the focus on the two boyfriends. I don't know, the two men that go, and avenge the harm done to Alex, and it would kind of be justified. being told backwards, you start with this horrible act, and then you get the explanation for the act, and then you get to understand how things were before and how everything evolved. So it takes away that heroism. It's just tragedy on top of tragedy. A violent act that was caused by another violent act, and the destruction, and it is irreversible because you get to see how things were, and now they will never be again. You can't come back from that at all. No one, none of the characters can. So it's a lot more impactful because you're not chasing the mystery of the story. It's the emotional aspect of it, and you realize, oh, this is the past. This is not. This is completely destroyed. There's no way to go back. And it leaves you very empty instead of, oh well, no, justice was served, even though it wasn't. Because one thing that I realized this rewatch that I'd never noticed before, it was just, he killed the wrong guy.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't. So that was the first. Just went downhill from there.
Yeah, it's a good point because there's no way you can know that at the time because of the way the chronological nature of the film stands. But it's yes, it's the other guy. I mean, as much as I think F this movie in a lot of ways, again, I still think Noé's a genius because he kind of flips a lot of the conventions of that genre rape revenge film on its head by basically turning it into a revenge rape film. So he basically turns that on its head in some ways. And actually, there's two cuts of this film. There's obviously one that is the main cut that is the popular one, which is in reverse order. But there's also a straight cut that actually does put it in the right order. So it does become that more classic tale. And the interesting thing about that is that the rape scenes happens in exactly the same place in the film, whether you watch it front to back or back to front. So it happens very much in the middle. And I think one of the things that does is in the classic cut, which tells it in reverse order, we don't know anything about the character of Alex. She is basically at the point where the sexual assault happens. She is a nothing character. We are emotionally detached from her at that point. And so when she gets assaulted, we have not built up any kind of connection with her. We don't know anything about her hopes and dreams about her. And what comes after it, when you put it afterwards, is that all of that event that happens after it in the movie, but chronologically first, becomes very bittersweet because we find out that she's the things that are exciting her in life. It's not, it sort of plays with the idea that she's, that sex plays a big part in all of their lives, but it's not. It's much more simple than that in a lot of ways and a bit of motivations. And because that happens at the end, we sort of get a happy ending. In a way, it is a film that's about rape, but you get a happy ending with, which again is very sensory. Like you come away from the film thinking, I shouldn't be smiling at the end of this. Is not something that I shouldn't have a warm, fuzzy feeling like. It's very, the end of the film is the bright, the colourful, the park, the kids dancing about, running about. It's a very pleasurable kind of experience at the end, but you're sort of haunted by what it was. And like all of that timey-wimey stuff, I think is really, really interesting to play with. You just have to get through a lot of stuff to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like how Alex is introduced as just a rape victim. It's just, she's in a coma, she's completely destroyed, it's just a victim. And then by the end, she's a person. And we get to learn. And I think it's a bit more impactful that way. I found it mournful. I remember thinking that, Chris, you were saying that it was kind of more optimistic. I saw it as almost entering a dreamscape. I found it very, very mournful. I was mourning for that character.
Yeah.
For all the potential that it will never be fulfilled.
It's almost like you know what's coming. So you see her in this happy place, and seems like she's pretty optimistic, and these things she's looking forward to, but you know what's coming. So it's almost like dread that you feel for her because you know that it's her life's about to change. All their lives, but hers, especially.
I think one of the really interesting parts about doing it in the chronological way that it was, it means that when you reflect on the characters, I think you tend to reflect on the two main characters, Pierre and Marcus, and about their motivations for what they wanted to do in terms of carrying out the revenge part of it, rather than ever thinking about, because it's not really about Alex in a lot of ways. She just happens to appear in this middle to the end, which would have been the start to the middle of reality. We don't really focus on her. The film isn't really a focus on her so much because she gets wheels past in the gurney, looking very battered and bruised, and then we have the scenes, and we only really ever see her as a person in two real modes, which one is a very happy, jovial nature, and then obviously while the rape's been carried out, that kind of a stress, but we don't really see her as a person after that, because she's just kind of in the gurney, as I say. Whereas we see the male characters in both forms. And I think it sort of led me certainly to think about actually what were the motivations of both characters in the end of carrying out the violence at the end of the movie. Was it love? Was it something else that they were sort of projecting onto that moment? And I think that's where an awful lot of my reflection about the character work kind of comes, rather than about the victim themselves, which again may be intentional in Noé's part to kind of say, like, isn't that weird? Isn't that weird that you're not kind of sympathising with the character, thinking about the character or the person that was raped or the person that was part of the sexual assault after the fact, rather than thing? And that might have just been me, certainly, but I think that's sort of what the film lends itself to doing for me.
I felt for her a lot. And for what's his name? Pierre is the boyfriend.
Pierre is the ex-boyfriend. Current boyfriend is Marcus.
Yeah, because I really felt for her, and not just because of what happened, but Pierre was an asshole. I don't remember that, but this time around I was like, no, he was a complete jerk, which is interesting to think that 20 odd years ago I didn't think he was a jerk. So yeah, a little bit of maturity helped, but he was driving me mad.
They're both assholes. I mean, I think that's one of the key
to some degree.
The key things. Yeah.
I guess the elephant in the room, what everyone discusses, what we've kind of touched on, is the assault scene. It's something that's done in one cut. It's very difficult. Of course, obviously, it's very, very difficult to watch. I guess, and it just like the same way that it was told in reverse. What's the why leave that scene there? I guess I go back and forth. Is it necessary to have it, or is it because he wants us to see the scene and to gasp in horror and have it affect us and have it stick with us because it's a horrific thing to happen. So I guess I go back and forth. Is it something that should be there? What does it add, or what does it add to the film? And if it wasn't there, what would it take away from the film?
The impact. I mean, we've grown so desensitized to rape. It's in so many movies. We've seen that, and it's screaming, fade to black, and then the aftermath, and that's it. You don't actually get to see, and just in real time how horrific it can be, and that was the genius of the movie. Not just for the rape, even the murder scene. It's kind of like that. How deliberate he was, smashing that guy's head. It was completely calm, deliberate. And the same thing is the rapist. It wasn't an act of lust. It wasn't an act even of control. It was an act of hate, and it was deliberate and cruel. And I guess we could be told that, could be inferred in many ways. We could just watch the beginning and kind of imagine, but actually seeing it from the point of view of the victim, the camera is just there on the floor. It's a very awkward angle, and you basically just see her face, you just see what's happening, and you can't do anything. And it goes on. You would think after a minute, okay, it's almost over. No, it's not. It keeps going. I don't know, 8-9 minutes. and it feels like forever. But I think that is important. That's why I was kind of forced to watch the first time. That it is important. You can't look away. You can't shy away from that horror. It's one thing to understand in theory. Other, of course, would be to live it. We're not going to get there, but this is the closest you can get to live that horror and understand without being just a concept.
I think you hit the nail on the head there a lot, Susanna, which is the fact that by not cutting away and representing both acts of balance for how they are, you don't give the chance for the viewer to change what is happening there in a lot of ways. If you try and cut that up and show it from different angles, it might turn the act of violence into a sexual kind of thing by kind of exploring different, all of that kind of stuff. And the same with the murder in the club later on. It's the fact it's not an act of revenge or for justification. He flat out just murdered that guy. He pummeled him continually. He didn't stop after, he could have, it just kind of stops. And the other thing that happens in that scene that I think is really interesting is the guy that walks into frame at the back when it's happening. He stops. And then he turns and walks away, right? You as a viewer can't help but judge that man saying, what are you doing? Yet, again, I think the intention is, he's saying, right, you're judging him, but how many of you're sitting in a room where you can look away? You can look away. You want to look away from this act that's happening. It's easy to judge somebody in the time for doing that, but you're sort of doing the same thing yourself by sitting in your living room and watching this. Nobody is enthralled by this actor. Nobody wants involved or wants any part of this act of violence. And I think it's, again, a lot of those things are very, very clever in terms of prompting you to kind of make judgments on people and things and then kind of reflecting yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the moment I was fine watching the scene. Well, fine. I was fine watching until that point, and then that happened, and I just wanted to scream. I really felt the urge to scream, come back, help, do something, because it was it felt so powerless. But the thing, and I don't know if this is a comparison, and I'm not playing devil advocate, but it is human nature, I guess. Like, just before the scene when she's getting into the tunnel, and Tanya guy he was arresting a woman, and she was just she wasn't going to interfere, and if I was in her place I wouldn't interfere either, just trying to walk by. Why do we do that? It's try to I guess it's a different escalation. She didn't know. She could tell that he was being that the woman was being arrested, but herself being a woman, what would she do? She's not going to get into a lover's quarrel or whatever. The other guy, he could have done something, and that's the point. He could have shouted, he could have called the police, something, and he didn't. Yeah.
Interestingly for him, again, I watched that bit a couple of times, just that little section. He just calmly walks away. He doesn't recoil from it. He doesn't run away. He just turns and sees and just walks and says, I'm just going to walk another way. I'm just going to go. And it's like, that's almost the most chilling part of it, is that it didn't affect him to the point that he changed the way that he was acting. He just kind of went, I'll not go that way.
Yeah, I think... I wonder if having that scene is of course it's supposed to be memorable, it's supposed to have impact on you, it's supposed to, but I wonder if that's the only thing people take away from it. If some people that's all they remember from it, and they don't kind of think about Alex and kind of the character, and that's all that's left for some people. I wonder if does it take away from the other things that Gaspar's trying to kind of explore, or is it? I guess it depends on how sensitive you are to those kind of things. But
well, it does detract. It's impossible to be indifferent to that scene the first time you watch it. But even so, the first time you watch it, once you kind of, because everything happens in reverse, and that's in the middle of the movie. So you still have half the movie to go. So you have time to kind of calm down, and then it gradually becomes lighter. So So it's almost watching a different movie from then on. It's not as violent. It's more intellectual, and you start understanding. So then the emotional crash comes. So if you're still watching by the end of that scene, you have a good chance of watching the rest of the movie and take more out of it. But whenever we talk about Irreversible, it's never about even the movie itself, because it's quite a hard movie to watch. The sound, the camera angles, that's rarely mentioned. What everyone mentions is that scene. And I don't know anyone who watched the movie that does not remember that scene specifically. But I guess that was intentional, and you have to have the stomach to watch it more than once to then get to the other details.
It's kind of why you've hit the point in the head when I say F this movie in a lot of ways. It's because the only narrative that comes from is people want to discuss that scene, which makes it gratuitous in that sense, if you know what I mean. Because then people are sort of reveling in the sensationalism of just that one scene, and that scene is just a point in the story, if you know what I mean. It actually is not the point of the story. The point of the story, I think, comes after it, in terms of the way that he tells the story, in which that kind of happy ending. But that it turned out that these were people with dreams, with hopes, and how that one act shatters that. But all people want to talk about is the events of that bit in the 1 hour 37, and it sort of reduces the message and the theme and all of the stuff that is interesting about this movie down to an act of violence, which, again, maybe quite intentional from Way's part, because regardless of what happens else in Alex's life, it will all come down to that one scene in the passage in some way. That's all that will dominate probably the rest of her life in some way. So, I think because of the very different nature of it, I just think that it ruins an awful lot of the other discussion about the movie from that, and why people say it's either not worth watching or otherwise, you know what I mean? You shouldn't be doing that in film. That's not suitable for people to be watching or discussing. But again, it's just a single 9-minute scene or whatever it is in the middle of the movie. And there's all the other stuff that sits around it is there to be discussed,
Well, I think he must have felt very strongly about it to leave it in, because I'm sure he knew that, excuse me, leaving that scene in it would limit the amount of people who would watch it. I'm sure he knew what the reaction would be. So it limits the kind of the accessibility of, it limits the amount of people who would watch it, who would be, So he must have felt very strongly about having that scene there. So I know that was probably something he felt he had to leave in. So.
So the thing that upset me more about that scene is not how to put this. I was thinking of how to articulate this. As a woman, is the helplessness and the guy walking away that topped. But the thing about the rape itself is it wasn't the rape itself. That's what I'm trying to say. It was the brutality, the beating afterwards, and even the rape. I think she's anally raped. So
yes,
the guy didn't even was sexually attracted. It was just the hate. It's feeling that hate. It's not the lust. I think women are a bit more, at least they expect lust, or are more conscious of the dangers of lust, of the risks of lust. But that was just an act of hate. And it wasn't the rape itself, it was the beating. That was a man that set out to destroy this woman for no particular reason, destroy everything that made her a woman. And that is why some women just cannot watch. They would read the romance novels with ripping bodices and all that, and find out all very nice, but they see that and they just can't, and they go into a panic. And I think that is why, and which makes me wonder that probably is not about sex. It's it's about just the hate, the violence, and how many different ways you can be violent. But again, digressing, because we start like with Alex's character, we see her first as a victim, and then we see her as this woman that gets attacked. But it's still, she's presented as a very attractive woman. She's dressed in a way that could be considered provocative, etc., etc. But then you realize that wasn't exactly the cause, and then you get to know her through the boyfriends and their different sexual interactions, and it kind of yeah, I have it on pause so I can watch the rest of it and finish my thoughts, because I think the point was beyond the violence, or the idea that I have right now is that it was trying to tell that sex is always violent, but it doesn't have to be hateful. That's what I don't know.
Yeah, sex is physical. I think actually those are all physical acts. You know what I mean? And I you've been making me think, obviously, with a lot of what you've been saying there. I mean, Monica Bellucci is cast in this role, and who is a phenomenally attractive woman. But as you quite rightly say, the attractiveness is not what the cause of the rape is not even the motivation in it. It's very much, and as the words come from Latinia's mouth all the time, it's very much about her being rich. It's about her rich. He is attacking his hate for the fact that she is rich, or that he perceives her as rich in some ways. And I think by casting Bellucci in that role, you kind of take and put it together with the scene. You kind of take and show the motivation for what it is. It's not actually what it should be in a lot of cases, which is about attraction. Because again, as we make our way through the rest of the movie, we see her more and more attractive gazes, if you know what I mean, and much more, salacious and, sexual kind of positions as it goes through. And we see her personality come out, and that she's also a very warm and attractive person as well on top of it. But in that scene and in that place, we see it for what it is. And again, to go back to the point of why you show it in reverse, because in that case, that's the first judgment we make of her, is that she's rich. That's the first thing that Noe is saying, is she's rich. She's getting attacked because she's rich. If we see it the other way around, we're influenced by all of the other stuff that we get, which is about our sense of character, the things that are important to her. And as it comes in the end, we see her the very last shot of the film as a mother, even though she isn't a mother at that stage. But we see her, she dresses differently. She dresses very in a floral kind of motherly way at the end of the film. And I think if you watch it the other way around, you can't help but be influenced and think that the act of violence is because of the person, rather than just about that singular act of violence towards or self-hate that man has in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it could be, one of my main takeaways from this one is just, wrong, you feel in the wrong place at the wrong time, your life and people around you, everything changes. In an instant, just one decision can send your life in a totally different direction, and everyone around you, and people, someone might get their head bashed in with the fire extinguisher too. So it's just how everything can change in an instant, and and in the beginning when we see this fletching club, which I learned what fletching was because of this movie too.
Your Google history of mess, Steve, is it? It's just
yeah, that's that was interesting. But yeah, seen this club and kind of this seedy underbelly, like this kind of like subculture of these people who do these things, and who that's almost like their lives. That's kind of, it consumes them, and they're like it's like this really dark and dingy and dirty world that they live in. And even the two men at the beginning, you see it's almost like you shouldn't be seeing this. It's almost like you feel like I shouldn't be watching this. Like you feel like a fly on the wall. Like I'm really uncomfortable. From the very beginning, you just feel like I don't like this. I don't like you. Makes you gives that feeling of I really don't want to be here. And then we go right into the other characters who are looking for revenge, and we kind of go backwards and see the aftermath of what happened. So it's very uncomfortable. It's right off the bat, very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just not a pleasant place to be, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the other points that's... Sorry, go ahead, Susanna.
No, I was just making a comparison with Enter the Void. It was uncomfortable to watch visually, but because of the visual effects, at least for me, I had to stop because it was just too much. Everything about Irreversible is, I think it's designed to make you uncomfortable, but you still want to watch. You know, if it wasn't for the sound, which I could mute,
Mm-hmm.
that was really getting my nerves. You know, even the visual horror, I would still want to watch more. It wasn't saturating me that way. But yeah, it's just, it takes skill to film something so uncomfortable too much.
Yeah, the twisting of the camera, the spin of the camera, actually, in some ways, was more difficult to watch than the actual scene itself that comes later on. But to your point, Steve, about that idea of that depravity. Normally, we see in a lot of films, we see poverty depicted in that way, that people are going along and you see just abject poverty and people going through. But in this case, rather interesting, it's like sexual depravity, you know, in a lot of ways, of these people that are reduced to like one singular act of pleasure is all that they're sort of living for. In some ways, like the guy who's, well, like taking this in another direction, just keeps on screaming about fisting, continually. Like that's obviously all consuming for him. And in some ways, you're felt very uncomfortable for that person rather than just, what's happening as they're going through. Basically, where is this man with his hate and rage, and this person can only think of one thing in their life, and it is incredibly uncomfortable. But that whole scene's very reminiscent of the scene in Enter the Void, where it goes and flies in through the windows as well. You couldn't help but see the kind of similarities between the filmmaking styles of those scenes and the kind of how that kind of turns your stomach or leaves you on edge, and it's like creates a sort of unreality of some sort, which is obviously what the club is about. And even, you know, all that visual imagery then of the name of the club, I mean, it's sort of the same in a lot of ways as Enter the Void. Even the neon light that says passage down here is very on point as to, you know, the sexual scene that comes later on. It's like almost like big arrows pointing all the time at what's about to happen or is going to happen or is significant about all of this. So yeah, very uncomfortable. I actually find the start of the film is extremely disorienting. To actually start a film like that is what is happening. So I could see some people not making it through the first 10 minutes of the movie. Because it's at 9 minutes when Vincent Cassel, Marcus's character, gets carried out in the stretcher, which is the first time it kind of goes sort of linear in any way of like, I recognize what's happening here. Before that, it's like, oh, what the hell's going on, you know?
Yeah. And I think, you know, when they do go into the club and they go deeper and deeper into it, it's another, you know, the farther they go in, the more, you know, the more that they become surrounded and the more dangerous it becomes for them. And just the rage that carries them through the first half, you know, until, of course, we find out what happens. But just the rage and this uncontrollable anger that just propels them through, and what they normally would never do, I would imagine. But they're in this club in the middle of the night, you know, in this really dangerous situation because they are carried by that rage and that anger. So it's just, I think in some revenge stories, it takes place over a certain amount of time. But this one's very short. It's within, I guess, a couple hours or whatever. But it feels very like, you know, if it goes on for days, it's different. But when you're in the mix of it, when it just happened, it's still fresh. I think that's makes it a little bit more powerful because it's still new and you're still being propelled by those feelings of just uncontrollable anger, and you're willing to put yourself in these really bad positions, knowing, you know, that you may not walk out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that people.
But did they know though? Because I mean, of course, they knew they were in danger, but they were so hyped and drunk. At least Pierre was, he was not thinking straight. But it was almost like they were feeling like they were above the law. They were very easily convinced that they could and should take justice into their own hands. They could have done things so differently. They could have go see her in the hospital. They could have talked to the police. There was a lot of bad decisions going on. And I don't know, can we blame it all on alcohol? I mean, is that something that a normal person would do? Just, I don't know, it was brave and stupid at the same time. Like, if it had happened at the end of the movie, we would probably be watching and thinking, they should have given this a bit more thought. But because it's the beginning, we don't know why this is happening, so we just go along. Something must have. But if you do it the other way around, it was not the cleverest move.
Interestingly, I am not sure that either Marcus or Pierre are doing it out of love for Alex. In fact, ultimately, at the end of the day,
get there.
Yeah. I think one, Marcus is his feels like his masculinity has been attacked, and in Pierre, although it's not really impotence, but it's the idea that he couldn't be that person for somebody in a sexual way. It feels like that is what their rage comes from, if you know what I mean. That sustained rage, that again, that idea of self-hate and masculinity, that it actually, again, isn't about Alex or their love, even though they both profess to love Alex, they're not doing it for that reason. And I think in its own way, that's horrific in its own sense as well, is that masculinity or that testosterone kind of manifests in that way is again very, very uncomfortable to watch and reflect on as you get to the end of the movie.
Yeah. So getting a little bit get a bit of psychology and perspective. They are great characters and they work for the movie, but one, I find it hard to believe that a character like Alex would be attracted to both of them at any point. That I guess they had to be opposites of each other for the thing, but at the same time, I couldn't. She seems a bit more, with better taste. I mean, they were both very flawed, I think, in individuals. And Pierre, when you first see her, is very distraught. But I got the impression, again, this time, not the first time, that he acted as he was grieving as if someone has just broken his toy. Because he saw her destroyed and beaten. He didn't even ask details of what had happened or why or what can I do, or he was just crying like someone just broke his toy. He was my girl is my girl is my girl. But I didn't feel the love I felt. Like it was almost like a pride or property thing. It wasn't. And Marcus, exactly what Chris said. It seemed the quiet, the most, more level-headed. He wasn't drinking, he wasn't doing drugs, he was very conscientious. He seemed to love her more. Later on, we kind of almost get that impression that he loves her more. And maybe he does because he was the one who then took action. But the fact that he was calm throughout, deliberate, that all that rage just came in. I think Chris was absolutely right.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that after the event that neither of the two of them went with Alex to the hospital or anything like that?
Yes.
Just didn't, that wasn't a concern for them, and that there were sort of predators on the side that were sort of looking to make money off this horrific attack as well, and saying, the police will do nothing, we'll sort it out for you, kind of thing. People almost again, males kind of trying to get benefit out of this horrible act. I was like, this is so icky. This does not feel good in any way. And again, the focus isn't on Alex as a person and as an individual and as somebody that's loved. That is just the two animals essentially that are rubbed up in their own heads, and obviously we can say Marcus might have been drug induced or otherwise, but it goes on for a while, if you know what I mean, to the point that we don't give him the benefit of that doubt, and just kind of say, like, these are not great men.
Yeah. Terrible tasting men.
Yeah. But I think it also speaks to how easily you can be manipulated in that kind of situation when you are driven by rage and by anger. Because it seems like these other men who were there were kind of, that's what their shtick was. Like, they would take advantage of situations, and it kind of demonstrates how vulnerable, because you feel like you're when you're in that kind of mindset of just driven by rage, you feel like you're in control, but you're really not. You're very vulnerable, and they preyed on those vulnerabilities. And now that you both mention it, all the men in the film seem to be not very good people. I think, at least, I think maybe the ex-boyfriend was maybe the only one who felt a little off, but all the other ones seemed to be consumed by something else, whether it be the club or, they all seem to be kind of in their own little world and not really aware of what else is going on, or kind of consumed by whatever it is that they're in the middle of. So yeah, I didn't really notice that until you both said it.
Yeah, they were just big children. Pierre specifically was very immature, and Marcus maybe was too mature. He was so restrained, but he was still just a facade. When he finally had when the dam broke, it broke. Yeah, and both of them, like I said, that Pierre was like his little toy got broken. They were both very possessive. I remember back then there was a scene when they are on the train, and I remember being a bit annoyed. I think it was Pierre had her arm around her, and it kind of had the image that she was just sitting there between these two men, and they were both talking at her, and she was trying to say something, and one had the arm around, the other was in her face. And I remember, because having been in such situations, I remember sympathizing and thinking, yeah, that's exactly what men do, even when they're trying to be nice to you.
Yeah.
Which, and it's a horrible thought, but yeah, it happens.
It's interesting, actually, that Bellucci and Cassell were married at the time this was made. They were cast as a pair, and actually, how maybe that gets the two of them on board insofar as being an examining a relationship, and the two of them having, like, they are meaty roles in both cases, to basically say, look, can we get the tenderness and the intimacy that comes later in the movie, and then turn that in its head throughout the form of the movie. But yeah, the men aren't great in this at all. In fact, they're terrible.
They can be, but there's some redeeming qualities.
and Marcus too doesn't seem very. He seems like he's paying attention to everything except for Alex when they're at the party and when he's mingling with other women, and he doesn't seem like he's kind of oblivious to even being there. So
yeah, he goes. Yeah, he's a sociopath, narcissist, whatever way you want to know. It's about him feeling good and the hell with anybody else. Like, even how he redresses his characterization of him running around women is, I'm just trying to help Pierre out, and Pierre's not interested, but we've actually seen what he's been doing. It's not really been about Pierre in any way, shape or form. It's been about him.
Yeah, they're both selfish. They're acting out of their own self-interest. Pierre just want to have fun, and the world is just a big party, and he's confident that he has his girl. And Marcos, he wants the girl back, for one. But yeah, they're both selfish.
Oh yeah. There's not much happy to discuss about this movie, though. That's it's really not.
There's nothing happy about it.
There's no light to the shade.
Now, do you think it deserves, because it was quite problematic at the time, and especially for Monica Bellucci. I mean, I don't know, people really, eventually it worked in her favor, but there was a lot of criticism of how they call it the meaning, etc., etc. And I vaguely remember watching an interview where she disagreed with all that, and she thought that it was important to that she didn't felt it was the meaning at all, and it was important to show the brutality of it. And she's known for risky roles. I think she did Milena before that, and it's another one that I would recommend. It has almost the female version of rape, because women can't rape other women, but they can do a lot of damage. And so she was perfect for the role, and I'm glad that she did the movie. And later on, the fact that she was married with Vincent, whatever his name, that comes across as well, and that adds to make the movie uncomfortable. Because even when you're comfortable, even when all the violence is past, you feel like you are intruding in this couple's life, and you shouldn't. And even when you're trying to relax, you're just feeling guilty and uncomfortable because you're still a voyeur. So, whatever was the intention, it's a movie that it's been around for over 20 years, and people are still talking about, even if they only remember the one scene, even though there's a lot more to explore.
Yeah. Provocative filmmaking is one of those things that never really loses impact. I think, even going back to Cronenberg's films, 70s and 80s, they still are uncomfortable watches for much the same reason as they were at the time. Their impact may lessen a little bit, and I think actually Irreversible, 20 odd years later, I think things that we pick out of it now kind of show where society's progressed, even in 20 years, about, like you were saying, about how we judge and view these male characters. Rather than just saying, oh, they're just men, they're immature. They're also not good people now. We can very clearly categorize that, and see that for what it is. So, interesting casting, I think, the whole way through it, because again, Pierre's seems to be a little bit older and less youthful and all of that kind of stuff. So it isn't just a maturity thing. It's more about the quality of person rather than anything to do with age. And they kind of knock that in the head as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to your point, Suzanne, about the sounds, especially at the beginning, the score, how it just feels like it's building and building and building, and it just like pounds in your head. And the camera movements, because I think you mentioned the camera and the floating camera. It's just all over the place. There's no.
It was kept going back and forth, and that movement. I felt like it was on the boat at some point. I was like,
yeah,
what happened? Yeah.
But the film ends with Beethoven's Seventh, the Allegretto, which while being like one of my favorite and most beautiful piece of music that I think is very much about that boat swaying kind of thing as well. That dun 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 dun, that goes through, but this kind of changes between, it's mostly minor the whole way through, but it has these little ends and resolutions in major chords with kind of a brightness, and then it's gone back through. So I love the choice of music as well. That was also unsettling and fit with the whole idea that there is brightness and stuff around her character at this time, but there's a dark undertone that's running through her life of the events to come. No accidents.
So what do you think it happens next then? Because we don't know. She's in the coma. Pierre is in the hospital. Marcus is in jail, I guess. What do you think it's going to happen from there? Just curiosity.
I mean, well, what happens to the baby is I think the primary concern in a lot of ways. Is the baby survive that? What impact does that have? I think regardless of what happens, Alex is on her own in a lot of ways. I think starting life, and does she do that with memories of the baby or memories of whatever it is that she lost the baby? She's many years of counselling ahead of her, I think, without doubt. And the fact that the guy who committed it maybe never sees justice because of the events of the film, because of the way Marcus and Pierre acted. Because it's shown very clearly he could have been identified. The transvestite or the transsexual kind of person could have easily identified him, in terms of a police inquiry of what happened. But I think a lot of that will now disappear. It's a sad and tragic. And actually, I've heard no way to speak about this. The purpose of the story is he wanted to show how one night could absolutely ruin not just one life, but multiple lives the whole way along because of actions. What happened on a Saturday night or a Friday night can change the whole course of your life in one fell swoop.
And the villain, he almost took pleasure on seeing everything unfold. It almost like he was enjoying the show, knowing that he caused it.
Oh, absolutely.
And he, I'm not sure if that was really his face, but he also had his face almost looked like he was wearing a mask, like he was almost like he looked like a villain. He had that kind of the facial he had. I'm not sure if that's how he really looks or they kind of added something to him, but he looks very emotionless. Until he's enjoying what's happening in front of him. But I think Alex will probably end up alone. Obviously damaged from everything that happened. I think Marcus will probably end up probably charged with something because of what he's done, and he has his arm broken. And Pierre, I think, will probably end up for a while because he did kill the man in the club with the witnesses everywhere. So he may end up getting, other than Alex, he may end up getting the worst of it because he'll probably take. He'll take the blame for the murder that happened in the club. So, he comes to visit his ex-girlfriend and her new boyfriend, and he ends up with the murder charge. So,
no happy ending in reality.
What about you, Susanna? What do you think will be the aftermath?
Oh, I just dread to think. I imagine Alex, if she survives, waking up alone, learning that ex-boyfriend or best friend and the new boyfriend, they are both away. Maybe she's pregnant as well. I'm not sure if that will be a good news or bad news under the circumstances, but she's definitely going to be alone with a lot of recovery to do, and it's just tragic. Because one moment she had pretty much everything life ahead of her, and a fairly good relationship with her boyfriend, and even a good relation with the ex-boyfriend, which is pretty rare, But she seemed to be okay with life, and then she goes from there to nothing, and she's alone.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have got into that underpass for years. Even today, I was avoiding underpasses, and this is true story. This happened like a year before I watched the movie. I was chased down an underpass once.
Oh no!
And this guy who just wanted to buy me a drink. Yeah, right. I actually ran, so I didn't like underpasses before watching the movie. Afterwards, then I always find a way around. If it's at night, I won't go in.
No. I have to say, like, I do appreciate for a female it's different, but for a male who's by themselves at night, those kind of things are phenomenally scary for the same reasons that women feel it. Because while some people might look at some men and go, "God, you'll be all right," there's the same kind of fear of physical violence that we know pervades through an awful lot of men, especially with alcohol in them or at night, etc. So, like.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying it's in any way correlated, but I can definitely identify with that feeling and that fear of what could be and of other people. Yeah.
The world can be a scary place, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this one? It's quite the experience.
Yeah. I think the next movie you're going to have to pick is going to have to be an Adam Sandler movie or something, Steve.
What is the next one?
Fantastic.
Oh, it is the Lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
Oh dear.
And then another heartwarming film. I haven't actually seen it, but it's Silence of the Lambs.
Oh God, you haven't seen Silence of the Lambs? I mean, everything's uphill from here. Like, Steve, that's all I can say. Every film that you might ever watch for the rest of your life. I can only think of a couple more that kind of live down in this kind of depravity. You like to reside a lot of times. Dear.
Yeah. But when you think about it, I think everyone should watch this movie, or at least try to. And even though it stays with you, it's not the most gruesome movie. It's not the most violent movie. There's plenty of horror and violence out there. I think what works really well with this one is there's just pretty much 2 scenes, and it's everything else the way that it was filmed. How concentrated the narrative is, that there's not a lot of plot. Everything happens in one night. So it's simple, and it relies a lot on the sound, on the imagery, on making us feel uncomfortable and disoriented throughout the film, which a lot of horror movies don't. It's just we see all the killings and the bloods and trails, and we don't care. Even if there's rape again, we don't care. We are so desensitized to violence. So if you actually analyze this film doesn't have that much violence compared with others, but it's done so well, and it prompts us from the very beginning. That starts, and then the scene with the fire extinguisher. You're already on edge, and you stay on edge. So when you finally get to the middle of the movie, you are just about to jump out of your seat, and there's no actual scares. It's just that continuing sense of hopelessness and despair, and you just want it to stop. Yeah. And very, very few films can do that. So I recommend it to everyone, just once.
I might not recommend it to mum and dad, I have to say. They have some triggers that they will not watch. But I agree in a lot of ways. It is a film that you can't watch passively. It refuses to let you watch it passively.
Yeah.
You have to take an active interest in either how you feel or what is happening on the screen, and forces you to have an opinion. And I often say to my kids when they read something or they watch something and it makes them cry, and they go, God, I hate crying at the end of films or things that really manipulate me emotionally like that. I says, no, but that's such a skill. That is such a skill to produce a piece of art that forces that in you to have an evocative response, to create an emotion within you that wasn't there before you read or seen that bit. And those experiences in life and through the arts are so rare that, much like yourself, I sort of encourage people to both see it, and then once they see it, they want to see more of it. They want to see one of those other films that are like that. And I know I just had a go at Steve about being, in the depths of depravity with his movie choices, but essentially a lot of those movies are that movie, are those movies which force you to thinking that you can't watch passively.
Yeah, it's it's an experience for sure. I think it grips you and it pulls you in. I think it's hard to not get your attention pretty quick. It doesn't really waste any time. But again, if played in chronological order, it would have been I wonder what the reaction would have been had it been in chronological order. But I think setting the bar for kind of what you're in for pretty quickly. I think that's also something that is important sometimes, just to kind of let you know, okay, we're going to go to these places. Within the first 5 minutes, okay, this is going to be, I know what I'm getting myself into. Like, this is going to push boundaries. So. Yeah, not sure if mom and dad will like it, but but it
My
is
mum and dad,
something.
definitely not. No. I'm just going to go and have a bath now. Even though we've just discussed it, it is kind of that film that you kind of want to wash from your body and wash from your mind, just so you can go about the rest of your day and not be affected by it. But it is affecting in the viewing experience and the getting into the weeds about it for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very tight too. It's an hour 30 something minutes.
37. Yeah. That's right.
There's not a whole lot wasted. There's really nothing there that.
No.
It's very, very tight. There's not a whole lot there that didn't need to be there, that doesn't have a purpose.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a good way to start a Sunday morning. Sunday afternoon.
Oh dear.
So, yeah. Anyway, until the next pleasant conversation. I haven't seen The Lighthouse, so we'll find out what that's about. But in the meantime, Susan,
I'm going to rant a lot about that one. My husband made me watch it.
Oh, really?
Ooh.
I have opinions.
Oh, cool. Wow, I'm going to watch that one this week. But
Nice.
But until then, Susanna, where can people find you?
You can find me on the page during forums, on X as Chronodendron, and on my channel, Den of the Weird.
And sometimes YouTuber Chris, where can people find you?
Sometimes YouTuber, well, if I haven't published a video in about 5 months, but if I ever do, you can also watch my backlog on my channel at Chris Moen. You can find me on the Speculative Speculations podcast. You can find me on Patreon forums and probably some other stuff. I don't know. Next time in the Cinephile Saturday, probably as well. Yeah. I just like other people doing editing at the moment. It's just the way to be and live, you know. That's it.
Yeah, whenever we do the speculative speculations, I'm like, this is kind of nice.
Somebody else is doing the work,
show
yeah.
up and it's like,
I just
I'm
turn up,
done.
yeah.
It's kind of nice. But awesome. Well, thanks both of you for taking time to talk about this one. It's a very interesting and thought-provoking film. But until next time.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for
next time.
joining.
Thank you.
Until next time.